Welcome to the Modern Athenas podcast with Sonia and Debbie, where we discuss how regular women became Athenas in their own time by working hard, persevering through the challenges in their lives, and contributing to a better world. This is podcast 13. In this podcast, we will be discussing the book Year of No Clutter by Eve O. Schaub. You can use the link on our website at modernathenas.com to order the book after the podcast. Eve previously wrote another book, A Year Without Sugar, which chronicled her family's year without eating sugar. We chose this book because it addresses ideas around clutter that inhabit all of our lives. Eve takes a year, well, a little over a year, to declutter her home, most particularly a room she calls the hell room. Through her decluttering journey, we learn about Eve's family's habits of holding on to clutter, the deep-rooted reasons why Eve holds on to material things, and lessons we can all use in our own lives. Eve is a modern Athena because she has overcome a significant emotional and physical challenge and transformed her way of thinking to make a better life for herself and a better future for her daughters by setting a better example. Eve lives in Vermont with her two daughters, Greta and Ilsa, and her husband, Stephen. All of them make appearances throughout the book, sometimes teaching Eve life lessons along the way. Eve also suffers from obsessive-compulsive disorder and takes medication to relax her and make her mind less scattered. Eve does not explore in depth in the book how OCD impacts her cluttered house, but one can insinuate that it has some connection. That said, not everyone who suffers from OCD has a cluttered house. In fact, many have immaculate houses, and not everyone whose house is cluttered has OCD. Eve describes her house as neat, not fanatically clean, but neat enough to have guests over. But then there is the hell room. It's the largest room in the house, a full 567 square feet. Quote, and it is filled from top to bottom with so much stuff, detritus, things, excess clutter, that all you can seem to do about it most days is close the door and hope it will somehow resolve itself. You can't help but occasionally wonder how. Not to mention that it's a secret. Beyond the 4 members of our household, the number of people who are aware of my eccentricity can be counted on one hand. A hand that is wearing a mitten. Like I said, most of our house is fine. We find things we're looking for, we eat, clean up, go to bed, and start all over again. It functions, and sometimes it even exists, as that sort of island of tranquility we all ideally want our homes to be. But the room? How should I describe it? It's my picture of Dorian Gray. It's the room that proves I am not, nor ever may I remotely, even for 5 consecutive seconds, pretend to be Martha Stewart. It's my Fibber McGee's closet. It's the room that I am not kidding, lock when the babysitter comes, for fear she will see it. It's the largest room in our house, and it is entirely unusable. The hell room, as we have come to know it, is really a world unto itself, a sort of land of misfit belongings. End quote. And as I was reading Eve's description of the hell room, I was thinking and kind of laughing because I think everybody has some space in their house that is this kind of hell room, the garage, the junk drawer, that spare bedroom that you think you're going to clean and never do.
Yes, I would say, especially with a 3-year-old, the house is kind of accumulating toys and things, but I think also a function of how many times we've moved recently. You kind of purge down and to the bare essentials. But I think the place that I have like a junk drawer mentality is actually my clothing drawers. If I use something like not very much, I'll just throw it back in the drawer and not fold it. So my drawers accumulate all these unfolded pieces of clothing that haven't been worn very much. And it's like every 2 months I have to like refold all of my clothes. And it's obviously something I could just take on and daily maintain, but I just somehow never do.
When I moved with my ex-husband from the East Coast to California in 2008, 2009, 8, we brought all of our stuff and we put it in this 20-foot by 10-foot storage unit. Okay. And some of our listeners are going to be like, the storage unit. This is the place where things go and never come out. It's kind of this like black hole, and you never know it's there. You don't want to go in it because it's chock full of stuff. Every so often you'll be like, hey, and then you think of some material item that's stuck in the storage facility, and you're like, I'm not going all the way over there to try and dig it out because I don't even know what's there. It was like trying to like wade through these little paths that you've left, and eventually you're like, why am I keeping all this stuff in this like 20 by 10 foot room? I don't know, it's kind of, I think a lot of people have storage units, and it's always left me kind of wondering why do you keep all that stuff?
I heard recently a statistic that the storage facility business is like a multi-billion-dollar business alone. And that's how much just over accumulation of stuff we have, especially in this country.
I know. I mean, it's like Eve talks about this hell room at 567 square feet. I know people who have storage units that are bigger than 567 square feet, or they've got multiple storage units in like different places because if they move, they haven't lugged all their stuff with them. So it just, it kind of leaves me thinking, yeah, like why? Like there used to be a reality TV show about the storage facilities and auctioning off, places that people never ended up coming and getting their stuff from. But I was just left with wondering, like, why do we do this? We pay money to somebody else to store our junk that we don't need. Quote, what's the real difference between the unlucky folks on reality shows like Hoarder and me? If I'm honest, it comes down to only one word, scale, which begs the question, at what point does embarrassing quirk cross the line into a diagnosable disorder? The idea that might not be on the side of the line that I think I am is an idea that, quite frankly, scares me. It messes with my sense of self, of who I think I am. And yet, if a crazy keeper is who I am, then stopping being that makes me what? Somebody else, filled with regret, or heaven forbid, ordinary? I mean, I have to admit, I like me. I even have a perverse love for the Eve who saves things most people throw away. I feel caught in a catch-22. I can't seem to live with the hell room, but I am deeply ambivalent about living without it. If we all had our own personal albatross, the hell room is mine. End quote. I found it interesting that Eve used the word albatross. That thing that kind of hangs around your neck and can't get rid of.
Yeah, this is a fascinating book because she goes in such deep detail about the things that we all experience, I think. And I don't know if it's an albatross, but I think I'm like really functional about my material items almost to a fault. Like I have the same, if I have one of something, then I don't feel like I need two or three of it. And sometimes I'll hold on to that same one something until it's like not usable anymore. And so, I don't know. It's just something about like, I can't rationalize like having a lot of certain things, and so sometimes I just never let go of like that one thing that probably could severely be updated because it's so like 1990s.
Well, it's funny because I'm staring at my bookshelf and I have literally the same 20 books I have carted for move to move to move to move to move because I'm addicted to reading them about 30 or 40 times a piece. And then I've got these books that I've never read, just like a bookshelf and a half full of ones that I've been carrying around with me that I just don't read. And it's weird because you think, how many more books do you need if you keep going back to, the same few books? And I think it works that way with any kind of material item. Like you were just saying, you wear out one thing all the way, yet you often buy like 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. I don't know if I do the same thing with like backpacks, right? It's like, oh, I need a backpack for this purpose and for this purpose and this, and then I end up using the exact same backpack all the time for every purpose. It's strange. I don't know if other people buy that, but
Yeah, or like CDs and DVDs, like we've carted around boxes of of these things because we think like we'll never be able to enjoy them if we don't have the hard copy. But nowadays you can absolutely upload everything you have, or now there's the brilliant Netflix, which we actually just signed on to. So, yeah, we've definitely tried to purge some of our CDs and DVDs after a while because they just were dead weight for a long time.
Yeah, I uploaded, the way I got rid of all my CDs was to put it all onto iTunes Music, which I don't love, but at least it was like a keeper of all things CD. And I got rid of literally probably 3, 4 boxes of CDs. And some of them were kind of sentimental. I'm laughing. Okay. I had this one CD that I took with me my first year of college, and my suite mate, Marianne, had to listen to this CD probably 50 times a week. I mean, it was ridiculous. It was the Apollo 13 soundtrack. Love the movie. But poor Marianne was like subjected to this, and finally like she knew the music as well as I did, and it was funny. But again, that goes to you actually listen to one and you carry with you 50. So it's interesting. And I think, now that I'm getting older, I'm a bit more mindful of, when I buy something, it's what is this going to replace rather than, ooh, I want another shiny whatever. Quote, a few years ago, I wrote a book about my family. Myself, my husband, and our 2 young daughters, living for a year without eating any added sugar. I wasn't sure myself at first, but as it turns out, the problems of too much sugar and too much clutter do have some important things in common. First, they are both relatively modern problems. Second, they both present problems of abundance. It is not sugar or things per se, but it's the ability to have too much sugar or too many things too easily that can get one into trouble. End quote. And you were just mentioning, Sonia, in this day and age where we have the ability to have so much stuff, it is almost a problem to have everything so readily available to us to just buy or to keep. And we don't think about really, how hard is it to get these, things and working hard to get these things because we just use and burn and churn.
Yeah, I was thinking about how moderation is actually harder than extremes. And it seems like our society is not one of moderation. It's kind of like it's easier to kind of go to an extreme rather than kind of be disciplined in your daily, decisions about, well, I'll need one of those things, or no, I don't need to buy a coffee at Starbucks today. And it's honestly, when I hear myself saying those things, it's such a luxurious problem that, probably most of the world doesn't have the luxury of having those problems because they don't have that much stuff. So, in a way, it's like we place too much value on being new and updated and inexpensive. It's like what can I find on Amazon and how can I find it cheaper and at Prime shipping and get it to my doorstep.
It's interesting that you mentioned abundance. So one of the really good examples is when you go to a supermarket abroad versus a supermarket in the United States. I mean, it's when you compare and contrast them, it's insane. I mean, abroad, you get, maybe 2-3 choices for something. Here, you get like an aisle.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, you're right. It's this overabundance problem. But also, I think our society just feeds into it. And as you're saying, I mean, look at dieting, right? It's an overabundance of the easy availability of food. And so what do people do? They go to one extreme or another. They go on some like insane diet, like the grapefruit diet or the cabbage diet, or they go to the other extreme and they eat McDonald's 3 times a day, 5 days a week, and like you're talking about that middle ground of that. You can have a little of this and a little of that, but you got to eat it all in moderation. I think it's very hard for people because we don't do anything in moderation.
Well, and I wonder if something that's contributing to that, even that environment where abundance can be a problem, is also our need to have choices. Whereas maybe like you were talking about, like in Europe, grocery stores have a lot less choices. It's a lot more functional. It's like, okay, you want some fruit or you want some cereal? Here's your choice of cereal. Whereas there's like entire 90-foot long aisles of cereal boxes in American grocery stores because I think people don't want their choices limited. I don't know. What do you think about that?
No, I agree. For some reason, it's the Amazon problem. Everybody likes Amazon, right? Why do you like Amazon? Because you like the 8,000 choices. You also like the fact you don't have to go to the store and get it, but it's just everything is there. It's like this warehouse of never ending size where you can find anything you need. And we, as a culture, I think, like things available to us that are what we like in the moment that we want them. I mean, just look at Starbucks, right? There's Pete's Coffee in California is another big sort of Starbucks franchise. There's Blue Bottle in San Francisco. There's multiple good coffee chains, all with like in a half to a quarter of a block of each other, and they're all busy. We don't have one coffee place in a block. No, we got like 5 options. And then at each one you go to, there's different coffee, different types of coffee drinks, different types of people. And it's just, when you really stop and think about it, it's kind of crazy. Quote, although I have yet to figure out what drives my compulsion to save, I know this much. It is the thought of making a bad decision, one that I will someday regret, that keeps me up at night. End quote. Eve tells about going through other family members' houses, most of which have clutter like hers. She also discusses going through an older man's home once he has died and realizing that he was a hoarder. She ruminated on the idea, quote, it's all going bye-bye eventually, as are we all. And that's where this line of questioning all goes, right? Fear of self-annihilation, fear that we, our memories, the things that tell us who we are, will all go, just as we too will one day go. Letting go of our stuff is a little bit like death. After all, what do so many people fear about getting older? We fear Alzheimer's, the living death. I believe this is caught up in our sense of self, the fear that one day we'll forget so much that we'll no longer be sure we even existed at all. Seen in this light, keeping things is a frantic attempt to hold on by any means necessary. End quote. I hadn't really thought about this idea about, older people or people fearing getting older because they fear Alzheimer's. But I think it's kind of true, and it's an analogy for a lot of different things. What we fear is that loss of something rather than thinking about, oh, what are we going to gain, in the future?
Yeah, and when she talked about the thought of making a bad decision, and it kind of gave a great insight into Eve's really why she probably had this clutter in her house. I can imagine that she's buying these items and she didn't want to give anything up because what if she needed it? I mean, I've had those thoughts. I think we probably all have. But I feel like this was a really deep rooted issue for her that obviously manifested itself in the hell room. And but I was really intrigued by that kind of fear that we will forget. And in a way, I wonder if it's because a lot of times now we're living so intensely, so busily. We're putting so much into our lives, not even material things, but our schedules are packed and we're constantly stimulated, at work and at home and everything. And I almost wonder if we slowed down our everyday, we wouldn't need to document so much in order to remember what happened. You see people out with their cell phones at concerts. I see this all the time because I work in an orchestra, and or at the amusement park or at scenic locations, I'm sure out where you are, where all the beautiful scenery is. The minute people bring out their cell phones, it's like they can't just experience it anymore. They have to document it so that they never forget that they experienced it, quote unquote. And it's really I don't know. What do you think about that?
I've totally suffered from this problem. So since about 2012 till about last year, I did a lot of sort of world wanderlust kind of traveling. And there's always this sort of push and pull. Like, do you take your phone out to take beautiful photos? How long do you keep the phone out? You don't want to experience your vacation through the phone, but at the same time, you want to take these pictures, right? So I got to a point where I was finally like, okay, enough of the phone, and I got a nice camera. And so like when I go hiking and stuff around where I live, which is just gorgeous, like we have the North Cascades, it's beautiful. I take my camera and I just leave my phone in my backpack, for an emergency. But then I'm not experiencing nature through my cell phone. When you go out to like restaurants and stuff, the amount of people who go to a restaurant and then sit there and, ignore each other because they're on their cell phones, it's nuts. And, I think as a culture, we've just learned to sort of accept living life through the cell phone. And, I can't even imagine what you must see at the concerts, but I'm having trouble wondering why people even need their phones out at concerts, but I guess it's kind of like this addiction. They can't go 25 minutes. And I don't know if it ties to social media. Everybody wants to get the most recent update. I'm definitely guilty of it. Recently, we got a little puppy. And all I want to do is video every cute thing she does and take 100 pictures. And then I was looking at my phone yesterday and realized I had 111 pictures of her. And I thought, oh, that's enough pictures for a while. But I think just as a culture, we're just so used to living behind them, that the screen, that we just forget to enjoy the experience.
Yeah, it's definitely a balance. I mean, I have a 3-year-old son, and like I have so many pictures and I only share a fraction of them. Today, I actually shared a picture on social media of my son because it was picture day at school, and I haven't
It was
really
pretty cute.
I haven't shared a picture of him in a long time. But I also, it's a balance. You do want to document, you do want to remember when, those special times, but you also, like you said, you got to draw the line to where it starts turning into that experience. You're experiencing it through that documentation, and you're not just living in the moment for what it's worth. And so I think it's a daily kind of balance that you have to strike for yourself. But it seemed like Eve was really caught up in, she's kind of this realization period as we start to see her decluttering unfold. She was realizing how far she had gone.
Yeah, she gives very vivid descriptions in the book about the 567 square foot hell room. But I was trying to think of 567 square feet, floor to ceiling, wall to wall full of stuff. For me, it would give me so much anxiety. I don't even think I could go in there to start cleaning. And I think at the beginning of the book, you kind of hear that a little in her, that I don't know if it's her OCD or just, generalized anxiety, but she can't really open up the door and start anywhere. And some people would say, well, just start in one place and, get rid of all the stuff in one little place and then you'll get rid of stuff in another place. But I think it's just so overwhelming when you have that much stuff to even know where to start. And, if you do start somewhere, you want to make piles, right? Like, oh, this needs to go to another room. This is trash. This is whatever. And pretty soon, all you've done is sort of migrate that stuff to other areas near you in the room, and you can't even see progress.
Well, and for her, it was rooted in fear, so she had to change her mindset, and we'll see how she does that.
Quote, here's my ray of hope. I'm really, really ready for change. I'm tired of fighting small, inconclusive battles. I want to win the war, once and for all. Reclaim the room, reclaim myself. I can do this, right? I mean, it's only stuff. When I save, I regret the loss of a clear, pretty, functional environment. But when I let go, I regret the loss of each and every memory, no matter how insignificant or unpleasant, because it is still some little bit of my past I must agree to let go of. When I let go of my past, some little part of me ceases to exist. Some memory retreats into the deep, dark recesses of my brain, never to be retrieved ever again. Looking around, I could see the consequences loud and clear. When you try to keep everything, control everything, you end up losing it all, controlling nothing. End quote. And I was, thinking about this idea that sometimes we grab hold and want control so badly that we end up not having any control at all, because either we lose opportunities around us or, we just can't see past that moment or that issue.
Yeah, really, it's almost like you got to break out of that mindset and see how far you've become or how far you've come in the path you've been down. And, I could really relate though to what she was talking about, kind of holding on to those pieces of your life that maybe you were really fond of, like whether it's childhood memories or trophies or accomplishments and things like that. And I definitely for a long time held on to like my racing numbers from track and cross country and pictures or recordings of me in concerts as a young oboist and things like that. But, you know, as I grow older, I felt like I didn't really need that anymore because I was becoming more sure of myself. And yes, those things are part of me, but I'm not in eighth grade anymore. So I don't have to keep remembering, how many races I ran and what I won or what everything, it's kind of bringing back the perspective to focusing on now. And now I feel like purging like old stuff feels pretty good because it's kind of that you feel a little bit lighter and less responsibility. But somehow I still manage to accumulate stuff, each year. And I don't really know how that happens. So it's kind of this periodic, like letting go of control, but it always kind of creeps back in.
Yeah, I mean, I have, different kinds of thoughts about that, because there's some stuff that I accumulate and then I go through these purge cycles, like spring cleaning, and I can dump it all, and I'm emotionally attached to it, but it's not kind of the end of the world if I let go. There's other things like just sitting here thinking about, I have this bracelet made out of parachute cord, and it's got little beads on it. It's got 6 beads on it. And in 1999, like 18 years ago, I went on Outward Bound and we got a bead for each phase of Outward Bound that we completed. So this bracelet it basically is my Outward Bound journey. And I've carted it with me everywhere, and I never wear it because I don't want to lose it. Like, I don't want it to fall off, but like, I absolutely will not get rid of it because it's a really good memory. Then there's other stuff, like I was saying, that it's like, well, it's a good memory, but I can, kind of do without this.
Yeah, and I think that you can push things too far too, and trying to purge everything and saying, oh, nothing's important. Nothing has, because there are those special things. I've like the first outfit that Ethan came home from the hospital in, I don't know, someday he might be interested in that, but, or, a piece of jewelry from my grandmother, like that's still something that, and they're just tiny things, but I think it's when you start like Eve seemed to be just down a path of where everything had this value that she couldn't find if it wasn't there. And but I think that selective keeping of things is important because it makes us feel good.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit later about her children's artwork, but one of the things she has a lot of in the hell room is her children's artwork. She doesn't dump anything. And my mom kept the cutest parts of my artwork, but she was very selective. And she also kept my report cards, which were hysterical to go back and read when I was an adult. By the way, I haven't changed at all, but I mean, they are just so funny to go back and read. So it's kind of just like this little walk down memory lane, but yet she didn't have to keep everything. And I think that that's one of the things that Eve struggled with during this year of how can I keep some stuff to maintain that memory while not keeping everything and not feeling guilty about purging some of the stuff that has memory attached to it. As the project progresses, Eve is still gripped with indecision and fear. Quote, See, this is what my brain does to me every single time. I'm so busy trying not to exclude possibility, to not close off imaginary roads somewhere down the line, that I can forget what I'm trying to accomplish right now. End quote. Eve saw the same trait in her daughter, Ilsa. If not forced, Ilsa could take a week to make a simple decision. Partway through the project, Eve realized that she needed to learn to trust herself, to make the best decision that she could make at the time, and not to hopelessly be gripped by indecision and fear. Quote, I worry way too much, but also I can't simply relax. Can't I just live today and trust that I will find a way to live through tomorrow and the day after that? End quote. Eve read Marie Kondo's book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. She noted that Marie had something she did not, extreme confidence. She, quote, trusts in herself to make a decision based on her needs today, not tomorrow or next week or when it starts raining frogs. I'm in awe of the power that gives her and a little frightened by it too, end quote. First of all, I've read Marie Kondo's book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, and it would be wonderful if we could all implement that in our lives all the time. But Marie does sound very confident in herself when she's saying these things. And she kind of makes you want to build that own confidence in yourself that, you can tidy up. But you hear from Eve this indecision of should I step forward and kind of off the cliff? Should I not? Can I step a couple of inches off, but kind of hold my balance over here? And just not really knowing how far she's ready to kind of push.
And when she mentioned indecision in this passage, it kind of also another word for that might be, some sort of ownership over your own life and your own decisions, because I wonder, I think if you're indecisive, you're also not taking on the belief that it's within your control and it's your responsibility to make those decisions. And you're kind of, you could almost tip into that, well, I'll just wait for someone to make the decision for me, or it's not my responsibility to take care of this, that, or the other. And it's almost like when we decide to take responsibility for the path in front of us and we just start to step and take that action, that can maybe also build that trust and that confidence, because now we feel empowered in a way.
Yeah, but I think that it can be difficult to make decisions. And I'm not talking about big life choices, but for some people, making those everyday decisions is really difficult because they worry about that road not traveled, or, am I going to regret this decision in a while? And I think learning how to make small decisions, first, and kind of building up that confidence by making small decisions. And, you're going to fail and you'll take one step forward, two step back, but there's that sort of slow building self-confidence rather than racing out and being okay, I have to make this huge decision today. There's a lot of people that just aren't ready for that. It's not that they're not intelligent. It's not that they don't want to make the decision. It's just that they're paralyzed by the inability to kind of take that risk, and like you're saying, you got to make the decision, take ownership of it. That's true. But I think for a lot of people, risk is something that they have a hard time handling.
Yeah, I guess I could see it that way. And also, I think the paralysis sometimes comes in when you worry about what people will think about your decisions too. And so sometimes I know it's easier for me just not to make a decision about something that I think will impact someone, or I think that they're going to be focused on how I decide to do something, when in reality, we're each trying to worry about ourselves to some extent. And yes, we're aware of what other people are doing, but also, a lot of that's impacted by how people do react. And with social media, all the decisions that people make seem to be out there at times. But I don't know. Do you think it's kind of also tempered by how people view your decisions?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I worked for an attorney that said at the beginning of a trial attorney, at the beginning of the trial, they make a decision. Are they going to wear a black suit or are they going to wear a navy suit? And then they wear the exact same color suit every single solitary day of trial, because studies have shown that juries gain confidence in this sort of regularity or routine. And so it makes them think you're self-confident. And, I was thinking about that and it's like, wow, I think Steve Jobs did the same thing, right? Wore the same thing every day and people weren't really judging him for it. I don't do that, but I can imagine that, it certainly frees up some of your decision-making space and some of your time to just, make that one-time decision. And realizing people aren't judging your every move. And I'm guilty of that a lot of times. I'm like, ooh, someone's going to judge what decision I make here. And it turns out they are so busy in their own lives, making their own decisions and worrying about their own stuff that they don't even know that you've made a decision or that, this thing matters to you. They're kind of in their own world. Eve struggled to be able to complete cleaning the room in a year and was often left frustrated by the sheer volume of it all. Additionally, with 2 girls to raise, she had a hard time keeping on track. Quote, "The problem was, as it so often is with a job such as this, which is to say big, long, and that I really had no clear idea how to do, all too often there was something more urgent to be done. Buy groceries, pick up the kids, make dinner, do laundry, pay bills. And always before I knew it, it was time to do those things all over again." End quote. I was thinking as she's saying this about how we use our routine as an excuse to not get other things done that we really need to get done. It's like, oh, I got to play with the dog. Oh, I got to go eat dinner. Oh, I got to, go to work. And then you get home from work and you're like, I got to watch the kids. And then after that, it's like, okay, now I got to clean the house. And you get these routines get so ingrained that you don't realize these 10-minute increments or 15-minute, windows where you could actually get work done.
Yeah, and sometimes, if you need to feel like you need to change things up or you want to accomplish something. If if I have a fitness goal or something else that I want to do, it takes that commitment. But sometimes the commitment is actually a lot less than you think it would be. Like it's 10 minutes a day or 30 minutes a day, whereas, and if you view it that way in these kind of bite-sized chunks where, you're just gonna, okay, well, if I decide not to go to the store today or every single night of the week, I'll just do it once, then I'll have that 30 minutes back every night and then I can do this. And it's about time management when it comes down to it. And I find that when I'm mapping out kind of a long-term goal, I have to kind of, parse it out to like every week, every day. And then you realize it's achievable, and it just takes it takes intentional action to put it into your schedule and kind of carve it out. It's not about, oh, I don't have time for that. It's I don't make time for that. And we all have the ability to change up our schedule. It's just what are those things that we're holding on to that feel kind of familiar and comforting because they're in our routine every day.
Yeah, when I hear I don't have time for that, what I really hear is that's not a priority for me, or it's not a big enough priority for me. And so I don't judge people because everybody has to make their own decisions on where they spend their time. But hearing I don't have time for it is just, to me, it's like, okay, it's not a big enough priority right now. When it becomes a bigger priority, you'll find the time. I frequently hear that at work, right? It's I'm so busy, I'm bumper to bumper, meaning I come in, at 8 or to leave at 5, and from 8 to 5, I'm literally slammed with work. I mean, you hear it from a lot of people, and this isn't the first job I've heard it at, right? But busy doesn't necessarily mean productive. And every morning when I first come into work, I spend about 15 minutes and I make my kind of priority to-do list for the day, because I know that, by 8:25, my entire day is going to be shot because I'm going to be pulled off to work on a project. But I make a priority list of like, what are the 3 things I'm going to do today before I leave? So regardless of what else happens that day, I get those 3 things done. And it certainly frees me and allows me to have not only control over my day, but then these projects or these things that no one wants to do, they don't drag and drag because I can't make the excuse of, oh, I don't have time. It's like, find the 10 minutes to get it done. Find the half an hour to get it done. It's, these bite-sized chunks really aren't that big of a deal. But if you leave a project till the end and you got to crank on it 12 hours a day, 5 days a week for 3 weeks, yeah, it's not going to be as good. And, you bad time management because now you can't get other stuff done.
Well, and I think that Eve was also saying that we get distracted from that plan, that we have best intentions to like get this X, Y, and Z done today. But then we have to do laundry and pay bills. And I think what I actually take away from what she's talking about is, and I've experienced, is I achieve more when I actually write down a plan, like I physically have it printed somewhere. Because then when I do get distracted and I want to come back to it, I can kind of remember where I left off. And I think, so if you have a big project that you're trying to work on or some goal, whether it's weight loss or learning something new or a race, I find writing it down can keep me on track from those times when I get distracted.
I'm kind of like in the middle with writing it down, but you know what I do? I change my password at work or at home on, my email to be something related to that goal. So every single time I log in, it's getting like in my brain, like I got to work on that goal.
Oh, nice. And that's a good way to make up a new password when you have to every 90 days.
With one special character and 2 of this and 4 of this. And yeah. As Eve began to declutter the room, she started looking at the room in her house differently. Her family enjoyed putting puzzles together, and she realized that the house itself was just a great big puzzle. One puzzle piece fits into each spot, and if the piece doesn't fit, it doesn't belong in the puzzle unless it can find another spot. No exceptions. Otherwise, what are you valuing? A functional living environment or the continued accumulation of objects? And I thought it was really interesting that she uses the puzzle analogy because it would suggest that everything only has one possible place. And if it doesn't fit in there, it doesn't fit in at all. And, I got to thinking, well, that is kind of true about home, right? I mean, there's only so many places to put, I don't know, travel mementos, right? And once you run out of space, you're just storing them.
I was thinking about what do we value? And maybe the puzzle pieces are, those openings for the puzzle pieces are kind of the characteristics in our lives that we value. And if what we're, let's say, going to go buy doesn't align and fit within those qualities, like I was thinking about, I value like functional things that bring me joy, that, it contribute to my health or well-being or progress or help me to learn something new. And so it actually really got me thinking about what is it that I value, and can I then make decisions that fit within those values rather than just kind of haphazardly just buy things because I want them.
Yeah, and I think impulse purchasing is something that a lot of people struggle with. Like they don't really need anything and then they walk in the front door of Target. You go in for like a $5 item and you come out with $200 of stuff. I mean, for real, that's almost every person ever that walks into Target, right? It's impulse purchasing. It's you see it, they have it set up in such a way where you're like, oh, I need that. And then you get home and then like you just put it all away and you never use the stuff. So the way that I've stopped my like Target problem is I go in with a list. Nothing that's off the list gets purchased. And you got to be like really strong the first couple of times, right? You're like, ooh, look at that cool new bag. And you're like, not on the list. And then you're like, oh, I could just write it on the list. But then it's like, what are you really valuing, right? You're not valuing your money, which you worked hard to earn. You're not valuing yourself and your own decisions because you made the decision before you walked in the store to not buy anything on the list. So you kind of are, you've lost sort of that momentum or that purpose of, why you're there. And then the other thing I do is when you get home and you've bought a bunch of stuff you didn't mean to buy, let it sit in the bag overnight. Just leave it there. And then the next morning, it'll be interesting to see how much of that stuff you actually need or what you can just take back to the store. So it's this, if you find yourself in that situation or, you're out shopping with friends and you just buy stuff, just pause, get the receipt, and you can always take it back the next day. One of Eve's friends, Miles, sent out an email to all her friends and family, asking them to no longer buy her any type of gift, no matter the occasion. Miles realized that she had so many objects in her home that she kept only because they were gifts. Many of us have the same problem. That platter from Grandma, the odd-shaped object from our eclectic aunt, the Christmas ornaments made by the family one Christmas when the kids were 5 and under. When Miles told everyone to stop gifting things, however, she didn't realize that it would leave other people feeling awkward, causing confusion and distress. And so we go back to the book to find out how Miles is handling gifts after learning that the gift giving is not just about the recipient, but is also about the giver. Quote, "So today I gratefully accept what people want to give, and I gratefully accept if people do not want to give. I make an effort to use the gift, but if after that it isn't something that fits into my life, then I put it in a box for the Salvation Army." End quote. Eve thought a lot about Miles's new tactic. Quote, "As a result of our philosophical ruminations on this account, whenever an unused gift rears its head in the hell room, I no longer hesitate to put it into the rotation for the consignment shop or the donation box. I remind myself that I'm not rejecting anybody's love by doing so. The best part is that I know someone out there will just love it, and just thinking about that person coming across it and having made their day makes me happy." End quote. So come on, everybody has that stuff that you get gifted, right? The worst case scenario, you get it gifted and then the next year you turn around during like Secret Santa or something and you put the gift back in and the person's there and they recognize the gift.
Well, and it's all a byproduct of the society that we live in, where it's almost like these obligatory times to give gifts because it's what you're supposed to do. And I actually really admire Miles' attempt at trying to make meaningful connections with people and kind of break out of that obligatory, oh, well, it's XX holiday, and so I have to get you a card, but it doesn't, whereas she'd rather maybe get a card from someone on an unnamed day, just for the reason because it was a really meaningful connection. And I think that's really something I want to try to figure out ways to do, because it seemed like she was finding a lot more meaning in those connections rather than those times where people just felt like, I have to bring you a gift because you're having a party.
Yeah, and I mean, I've struggled with this, right? Because I feel like there's this expectation that I gift people, but I've basically stopped giving gifts because I don't really like getting gifts myself. It's like if I need something, I'm in a blessed position to be able to get it for myself at some point. So when people give me gifts, 9 times out of 10, it's not stuff I really need, right? So it's like then it starts to accumulate and you feel guilty, or it's like something like a little statue somebody bought you, or whatever, and you're like, honestly, for a while, this isn't even a joke. I would put a Post-it on the bottom of whatever it was so I knew whose it was, and then when they come to visit, you like put it out. But then I realized that's crazy, and oftentimes they didn't even know that they had bought that for you. So going both directions, you kind of think like, what is this crazy gift giving culture we have? And backing away from that a little bit and giving a gift that maybe is meaningful or useful to somebody that's not as glamorous. But, for instance, to a new mom, recently I got her a gift certificate to the spa for herself, because the baby gets enough gifts. The baby doesn't need any more gifts, right? But mama needs some gifts. And so I think it's like, Miles is saying, it's this sort of, you give with a purpose, but you don't always have to give.
Yeah, what we did for Christmas, my extended family and I, this last year, in lieu of gifts to each other, we decided that we were going to give a donation to a charity of each other's choice. And it's just in light of that abundance that we really do in this country often enjoy, is, we don't need any more stuff. And it's like, I don't need to go in the Target anymore. I don't need another dollar item from the bin.
Did you just call it the Target?
Yeah.
That's hysterical. I've also heard it called Target, by the way.
Yes, of course. Well, yes, that's the high-end Target. But yeah, but I think that, there's ways that we can just try to make more meaningful connections that's about the person. And I think that's what Miles was seeking.
I agree. Eventually, Eve became a fixture in the local charity shops, consignment stores, and library, where she gave away all the stuff from the room that she could no longer keep in the house. Sometimes it was a struggle. She would rationalize with herself that she could keep one item out of each box she was discarding. By the end of the year, though, she was no longer keeping anything from the boxes. It all left the house, never to be returned. Quote, In addition to becoming an embarrassingly familiar face at the donation door of the charity shop, I'd come to know Diane, Stephanie, Ellen, and Jason, who run 3 different consignment shops where I took well-meaning gifts, unnecessary furniture, and mistake purchases. Were I to reveal the sheer volume of books I've stuffed into the annual book sale closet at the local library, they might name me an honorary benefactor. The routine helped me not to get bogged down. Like a shark, I had to keep moving. Each place has different hours, different rules, and I've internalized them all. Who requires an appointment? Who isn't open until after 11? Who won't even look at your things if they aren't arranged neatly on hangers? Some afternoons I'll get ambitious and hit them all in a giant looping circle, always vowing never to return home with anything but an empty car. For the first time, through the force of sheer stubborn repetition perhaps, I was stopping the endless cycle of self-doubt and truly letting go. Once dropped off, objects were erased from the whiteboard in my mind. Gone. End quote. And I thought it was really interesting that here she is sort of trying hard to get rid of stuff, and she ends up creating a new routine for herself of how to get rid of it.
And she's really kind of gaining momentum now in this phase of the decluttering. And in a way, it's like she's really getting into a new groove, like you said, a new routine. And what really struck me, though, was that sometimes we don't know the freedoms that we'll enjoy when we kind of break out of an old routine. And, we don't break out because of that fear or something, but we're really missing out until we really let go of that old routine, maybe. And like, she's taking on this new routine, but she seemed to have this freedom because she was just now like in accelerating and getting rid of this stuff.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that creating this routine for her helped her continue to get rid of stuff. So I think if she didn't have this plan on this loop or whatever and didn't really get to know the people, she wouldn't have been as invested in getting rid of the stuff because it would have been a hurdle every single time. Well, how am I going to get it out of the house? I can box it, but then what am I going to do with it? And so I think having these avenues for her really enabled her, like you're saying, to speed it up and keep the process moving. Much of the year, Eve laments over things that she doesn't want to get rid of because of the memories attached. Quote, I'm torn. I want to save every tiny scrap of my children's lives and tuck them away in a childhood archive. Not so much for them, but for me. But by acting according to that principle, I realize I'm preventing us from enjoying today now. End quote. Eventually, Eve becomes creative about how to preserve those memories, but cut down on the number of items in her home. Every year, Eve spends a week weaving at a school across the state from where she lives. Usually, she brings bags of materials from home and figures out what to do with them. During the Year of No Clutter, she took bags of materials with the intention of creating a rag rug or a memory rug. Each article of clothing or important piece of material would be cut and wound into balls, and then the balls would be spread on the loom. The resulting area rug would be handcrafted and full of memories. The remaining material scraps could be donated. Eve's rug turned out to be everything she wanted it to be, and it found a place on the floor of the room at the end of the year. Another way Eve creatively preserved memories was by sending away her children's artwork to be made into a book, each page representing a different piece of art. She had saved every scrap of paper or art project her girls had made to that point. She and the girls separated the art into 3 piles, one for Greta, one for Ilsa, and one if the artist was unknown. She laid the art out in the room and had the girls pick their top 100 pieces for inclusion in their art book. For Ilsa, who struggled with indecision as much as her mother, Eve picked out the first 90 pieces and had Ilsa pick out the last 10. The resulting art books found a home in the room, but the piles of artwork made their way to the recycling bin. Another decluttering project complete. And I thought, Eve was really clever on how she was trying to hold on to these memories, but in ways that was allowing the clutter to leave the home.
She seems to be recognizing that importance in balance between kind of holding on to things that are really special, but not letting them kind of overwhelm your life. And it's also very apparent that she is kind of a master at process and systems. And, this was a really productive project for her. And I think that in a way, it's almost like she's replacing these old, maybe less desirable habits with new, more productive habits. And that's kind of the transformation I started seeing with her throughout this, assuming these new routines and these new projects that are positive and kind of giving new life as opposed to kind of holding her down. And, one thing that I do with my pictures of Ethan, which are numerous in number, but I actually take them all on my phone and then I upload them to my Dropbox and then because then they're file named, they're I could sort them by date, and then I simply just pick like the best 25 pictures from like calendar year 2017. I'll do this for his fourth birthday. And then I go on Shutterfly and I buy one book, a photo book with those like 25 pictures. And then I have my like, oh, here's the 4-year-old Ethan book. And I've done that every year so far. And it's been a great way to have that kind of keepsake, but it's like manageable.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like you were talking about, she's creating new routines for herself. I think that it creating new routines is the only way to sort of make change in your life, right? Like, so if you really want to, exercise, you got to create a routine where you're going to be able to get that exercise in every day or every other day, or, however many times a week you want to exercise. If you want to eat healthier, you've got to meal prep, you got to plan, you got to get into new routines about coming home and eating and not picking up the takeout on the way home or ordering takeout on the phone and then, getting it delivered. So I think it's this notion that it's going to be uncomfortable, and Eve talks a lot about that, about how at the beginning, it's hard, it's uncomfortable, it's not something she wants to do. But as she gets going, the routine sort of develops on its own, and it takes over from the indecision and takes over from the bad habits and kind of propels her forward to be able to get to the end of the year. Like Eve, many of us get buried in memories, living in the past and forgetting to live in the now. Quote, I love looking back, but a large part of this year for me, I'm realizing, is not just about getting rid of stuff or even changing how I do things. It's about realizing that it does me no good to live with my eyes glued to the rearview mirror. End quote. And, I think it's important. I've talked about this quote before, look forward, not back, because there's nothing behind you that you need to go do. But, here's Eve struggling through the decluttering and realizing that she spent so much time looking in the rearview mirror and having this, moment where she's like, wow, I need to turn around and look forward.
And at the same time, it seems like she maybe doesn't, I don't know if she realizes yet, but she's creating new memories, like with her daughters kind of sorting through the artwork. That's kind of a collaborative time. And what it boils down to is it just, I feel like I can't be reminded enough how important it is that I don't take now for granted. And, we're only given one life and we have to be good stewards of it. And for as long as that life's going to last. But I think it does, I can never be reminded enough, like how important it is to just focus on today. And I have not always felt that way. I mean, it's hard when you're younger. You're always looking almost too forward. You're never in the now because you want to be 21 or you want to be out of college or whatever the next landmark is. But now it's really important to just kind of take every moment and cherish it.
Yeah, I mean, being a new puppy parent, I can't wait until we're out of this phase of puppyhood. But with that in the sort of forefront in your mind, of the back of your mind is like, oh, she's only going to be 9, 10 weeks old one time. Oh, she's only going to be 12 weeks old one time. And, you really, really want to cherish those moments and kind of bury those snapshots in your permanent memory. And I think being present, as you're saying, being present in that moment, and it's not going to happen, 24/7, but I think really pausing and detaching and then reminding yourself, okay, I need to be present right now. I can't worry about the future. I need to focus on what's happening here because this is where the memories are getting created. And someday this is going to be the rearview mirror. And then is going to be another now when you want to, again, make new memories and not just live those that you've already experienced. At the end of the project, Eve had a hard time letting go of it. She was insistent on changing out the carpet as if somehow that would prolong the project. Her husband noted that at the end of the year of no sugar, she had had one Reese's, but she didn't go back to eating sugar all the time because she had changed and their family had changed. Now, he reasoned, Eve had changed once again. Quote, and once I understood it, I admired the wonderful symmetry of it all. Where once I had held onto objects so tightly I nearly strangled both my past and my present, now I've held the year of no clutter so tightly that I nearly strangled it as well. I told you, I'm nothing if not consistent. So once again, I'm practicing trying to follow my own admonitions, the lessons the Hell Room has taught me, to trust myself, keep less, use more, be imperfect, Doing these things feels like stepping off a cliff into thin air, but it's paid off before when, after 10 years, I finally took the medication. When, after 18 years, I finally opened the hellroom door in earnest and decided to tell the world my ugly secret. And when, every single time over the last year, I made a decision to keep or a decision to discard. No decision that we make about anything in life is 100% safe, and I now know that's what kills me. In the end, the room wasn't as much of a hell as it was a purgatory, a room of indecision, and I have transformed into a person who, rightly or wrongly, can make decisions. Somewhere along the way, I came to a startling conclusion, which is both the bad news and the good news at the same time. At the end of my life, no one is going to show up and give me an A+ if I did enough things right. End quote. And I was really thinking about that, the end of your life, no one's going to care about those things that you didn't do right, or all of that material junk that you kept, or, those, as you were mentioning, the racing bibs you kept, or, no one cares. At the end of the life, what do you celebrate? You're celebrating memories and moments. And so again, it's that living in the now, and it's being able to create those memories rather than stifling yourself with stuff.
Well, and I really got the sense with Eve by the end of this book that she's starting a whole new phase of her life. Like now it's just beginning, and now she's just getting these new opportunities that she maybe never even dreamed of, and it's all because she made those decisions. And honestly, reading the words like keep less, use more, be imperfect, the be imperfect is kind of the hardest. It's a hard thing to even say. And I don't know if it's just for women, but men too. I think that one of the things that I still have a big fear of is failure. And, I'm in a way I skirt around that because I'm really selective in my goal making, and I'm pretty cautious so that I know I'm going to achieve what I set out to do. But there's still those times of fearing the unknown, and yet I leave this book wondering what are those freedoms and those new chapters of my life that I'm kind of neglecting if I don't kind of step into that unknown. And that's a really hard thing to do.
Yeah, and hearing her talk about the room at the end of the book as a purgatory, as a room of indecision, that really hit me, because it's like so often you live in this purgatory where you just you can't move forward and you can't move backward. You're like paralyzed almost by that indecision, and you're not really living life when you're living in purgatory. You're just kind of waiting and treading water, but you're not making new memories. You're not progressing. You're not, making something of your life. And so I was, really thinking, where are those moments in my life, now and maybe in the future, where I'm kind of swimming in that purgatory, and how can I help myself get out of that? Do I need to make stronger decisions earlier? Do I need to make smaller decisions incrementally that get to a big decision? Do I need to reach out and have someone help me make the decision? But it's definitely, making me think about it a little bit. And on that note, that's all we have for today. Thanks for listening and downloading and sharing this experience with us. You can also interact with us and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, where we announce episodes and share additional information about each podcast. If you have questions or comments about today's podcast, please submit them to us via our website at modernathenas.com, or our Facebook page, also under Modern Athenas, our Twitter account at Modern Athenas, or our Instagram at the Modern Athenas Podcast. We would also appreciate if you support our podcast by leaving us a review on iTunes or Stitcher and subscribing to the podcast. In our next podcast, we will be discussing the book, The Dressmaker of Khair Khana, by Gail Zamach Lemon. As we leave you today, we want to remind you to never forget that each of you, like each of the modern Athenas we have discussed on all of our podcasts, has the power and capacity to be a change maker in your world. Work hard, dream big, and reach for the stars.